Alright, I'm back with another Destiny 2 video. We are in the second day of the season, and everybody's mad already. Mad, or I guess sad, is the appropriate terminology. Pretty much is what happened is the season has launched, and it is very not unlike all past seasons for the most part. There are some, minor switcheroos, and we don't have six-man activity. We just have three-man activities, but the fundamentals are the same. And there are a lot of people kind of complaining about this on social media, and then we've seen a good amount of high-profile creators kind of make videos being exasperated with the state of the game. I've made some of these videos myself, but I did just watch Glad's video about this that he made. I think he made it on stream and then put it on YouTube. It's like an impromptu thing, and I think he sort of exemplifies the overall exhaustion in a good way. This isn't like, I know this is like my response to Glad, but it's not like YouTube drama. It's like I agree with most of the points he's making. I think the difference is that I will still end up playing the season probably more than he will, just because even with all the issues, I still fundamentally enjoy doing the loop to some extent. But there are very real problems with what's going on, but I also want to talk about why it's so difficult to kind of see a solution or see a major overhaul coming. So one of Glad's main points that he makes is like he just the act of like walking up to the seasonal vendor in the helm, interacting with it, seeing the screen with the little, the rep system, and then seeing the little tick boxes of upgrades that will be time gated over the season, and then knowing you're going to be logging in for the next 8 weeks to do one story mission, and then grinding out 5 patterns for the weapons. And like outside of like a couple, diversions like the dungeon, we don't have the dungeon till Friday. That could be good content. There's an exotic mission coming. But generally the loop is the same, and it has been the same for a couple of years now to a certain extent, and it does not seem to be changing anytime soon. So what essentially is happening here is Bungie has created an assembly line for live service content. There are not that many games in this space doing what Destiny 2 is doing on a yearly seasonal basis. So you have many games that have seasons, but most of the games that we talk about when we think about seasons are dedicated multiplayer games where you might have a new battle royale map or something. Like even Fortnite only gets, or Warzone only gets a new map like once a year, once every 2 years, like not that often, and you're doing something like introducing a new hero if you're Apex or Overwatch, and a couple of new weapons. And like, not to say that isn't a lot of work, but it is much different than what we're seeing with Destiny 2 live support, where they have this entire PvE side to the game in addition to a PvP side, which is obviously kind of woefully neglected at the same time. So they have to create a sizable amount of PvE content while trying to avoid accusations of recycling old content or using old assets and things like that. And they're just, I am having genuine trouble thinking of other games that come up with this much content at this same of pace, this often. There aren't many examples of places being able to do this. One is maybe Genshin Impact. While I've been away from Genshin for a while, that is something that they had gotten down pretty well as well. They would add some pretty chunky new content, every couple of months, couple of weeks even, and that was something they do. I know some of the longer term MMOs, have really done, I don't know if they do exact seasons. I'm not really sure how like Final Fantasy 14 works and stuff, but they create live content to a certain extent there. But what Bungie is doing, and I made videos about this before, where the size of these seasons has dramatically increased. So like we're right now we're in Season of the Seraph, and the last time we saw Rasputin in any meaningful capacity was Season of the Worthy. That season was essentially a public event. The main thing was a public event of that season, and then there were these little bunker activities. But like the scale of the seasons has dramatically increased since then. And the way they've been able to do that is by sticking with this like very, very kind of fixed model where like they don't have to think about reinventing the wheel for the reward loop and economy and stuff every single season, because they know they're going to have their home vendor, they're going to have this time-gated series of upgrades, and so like they focus on just making the activity, like making, I guess, the most content they can or they can budget for within that current season. However, what we're running into is a situation where the volume of content is not necessarily the problem. It is the presentation of the content and the structure of how it's released, which is becoming the problem. So Season of Plunder is probably the best example of this because it is a season that has like dollar for dollar probably the most physical content in a season in a very long time. Like Catch Crash is about as close to, a sundial-like activity as we've gotten. And Expeditions, while not as good of an activity, it's easy to see how if this was Season of the Worthy, that might have been the only seasonal event we got. And then there were the little, a couple story missions. There were the little Lost Sector pirate things, and there was weekly story beats and stuff. And the volume of that is large. Same thing for the season before with the Haunted Leviathan, or Derelict Leviathan, where seasonal activities were a little lighter there. We ran way too much of that one public event in there, but they also spent a bunch of time bringing back that entire space and like redoing it, doing all the stuff with it and like bringing it back into the narrative. And that's something that we would not have seen in most past seasons. So like the volume of what they're doing is increasing, but because it is stuck to this same format where there are so few changes season to season, like there's this famous list of like you can list 12 things immediately that will be true about any given season, with the tick box upgrades, seasonal vendor, the umbral focusing, the seasonal artifact, the resetting pot, like all of it is on this really fixed track. The problem becomes, what do you do? Because it is hard for me to see this being fixed in anything approaching a reasonable time frame. Like I knew there was no question that this season was not going to be any different fundamentally in terms of structure from past seasons. But like the reason Bungie is doing this is because it works with the process they have set up. And this is the part where we don't have the data. We have the vibes, and the vibes are bad. We have these social media echo chambers where everyone is complaining about everything all the time, often myself included. I'm not immune from that, obviously. But we do not have access to the broader population, to the casual, not as online population. And we don't have access to sales numbers, pre-order numbers, full player count numbers. We have some tracking of player count numbers, and we can see some dips. I saw there was something about how this seasonal start is lower than the last few years of seasonal starts by, 10,000 peak players on Steam or something, and then we had all-time lows last time on Steam too, but yeah, we only have Steam data, that's what we have to work with. But also, we are in year 5 of a video game, and most video games are not going to see their player count go up indefinitely. So if Bungie is satisfied with Lightfall pre-orders and Eververse sales and seasonal sales and those metrics, they are probably not going to feel like they need to break the wheel and change things. That isn't to say I don't think they should change things. I think the same kind of, you have to produce a seasonal activity, and despite saying things like they should take a season off and only make PvP maps, like, that's not realistic. Like, that's not going to happen probably. So like within the bounds of that, I do think they could change some things about the things people are the most tired of: the seasonal vendor, the time-gated upgrades, like the 8 weeks of story beats, and then a 2-month delay until the last thing. Like that seems like something where like you could take the same content that you're going to make anyway, but then rearrange it in some way. But one thing when all these issues are brought up is there aren't really that many alternatives proposed. Like even Glad says, he's like, I'm not like creative or smart enough to like do game design, so like I don't have the answer here, and like I have some suggestions, but like I am also not smart enough to find all the answers to this, because there really are no easy answers. Like, you're tired of the time gating, like, great. There's no more time gating, and now you can grind out everything within the first 2 weeks of the season, and then everyone complains that there's nothing to do for the remaining 10 weeks. That is a very obvious thing that would happen. You could say that might be better overall for morale, and you can go do other things, but you can also see why that is a downside to Bungie and why they're doing it the way they're doing it currently. I wonder if it feels like Bungie has scaled up enough, and like the size of these seasons are large enough now where like I wonder if they could do a year that is 2 DLCs again. I know a long time ago they said they didn't have the resources for that and they weren't going to do that anymore back in the Curse of Osiris and Warmind days. But that was 5 years ago or whatever, 4 years ago, and Bungie has scaled up a whole bunch since then. Bungie has been bought by Sony for $3 billion. I feel like it is possible, like seeing the amount of content that they make for 3 seasons, if instead of 3 seasons in between expansions, you do 2 DLCs again, and maybe those are more heavily front-loaded. Maybe those are more focused on creating new zones, new strikes, new PvP maps and things, as opposed to going so hard at the live model. Maybe that could be something. But like, again, this is just me spitballing, and I am not a multi-billion-dollar corporation that has very much married itself to this live model. I'm just trying to express that, like, I simultaneously understand why everyone is kind of sick of the same type of grind season after season and why nothing seems to be changing, but also recognizing the why of why nothing is changing, because it's taken Bungie a long time to spool up to be able to put out this much content with this much regularity, and to change that would likely break a lot of things, and like it could dramatically decrease their revenue, and like they'd be less prone to invest more. Like, there are many potential downsides of, you know, I don't want to say, you know, fixing what isn't broken, because you could argue that it is broken, but again, without the actual data, it is a little hard to say for sure that like this is not working. This might not be working for me and you, like Destiny diehard people who are making Destiny YouTube videos and watching Destiny videos. And I think there is something to be said about re-engaging those players, but there is some level of like, Bungie's a business. If the numbers aren't bad, then they're not really going to make any massive overhauls of things. At the very least, I am guessing we get another year of this. After Lightfall, they're already planning the season. Like they're planning the seasons now for next year. After Lightfall, like you got to work on this stuff way in advance. That's how it works. What I'm hoping for is at least some changes to the things that people are complaining about the most. That may not be this huge restructuring of the whole seasonal model, which is just probably not feasible. But, you know, looking at things like very samey seasonal vendors, seasonal upgrades, seasonal artifacts, like the power grind, the pinnacle grind, like the stuff that is the same season after season. That is the stuff I kind of hope they look at, even if they keep the overall seasonal model intact. So that is kind of my initial take here. This is going to be debated endlessly. We're day 2 and we're already having this debate about the season, which is, I guess, not surprising given, you know, where the conversation's been, and like the season has not arrived and instantly fixed everything. Surprise. So we're immediately back here again. But I will be focused at least on like the content of the season for a little while here, and we can get into more philosophical debates as time goes on. But like I feel it too. I feel the burnout too. At least the good news here is I know that the pattern grind and the deep set grind seems to be a little less oppressive than before. I'm looking forward to the dungeon. I'm looking forward to the exotic mission. That seems like that has the potential to be interesting, cool content. That is where Bungie shines. Hopefully there are no dungeon breaking bugs like Duality had, but I think that is still content that they are really good at producing, and that can be really engaging. So we'll see. It's a tough situation for everybody. It's a tough situation for players. It's a tough situation for Bungie and for content creators. Like everybody is having a bit of a tough time at the moment trying to reconcile like what Destiny is, what it is capable of, like what it's going to be doing next. And we will keep having these conversations for many years to come, I imagine. And then I am not even getting into PvP and the comp ladder, which is its own nightmare. That's another day. We'll save that. But anyway, for now, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.